it's overwhelming, but it's also our jobs.
Our job is only going to get harder.
It's worrisome.
This is something that's unprecedented.
Now is not the time to be a cowboy. No one has anything to prove. We're all in this together.
Welcome to reporting from the front line of the pandemic. I'm Victoria Gonzalez, and I'm here with Chelsea Swift, a news reporter at Jet 24 Action News in Erie, Pennsylvania. Thank you, Chelsea, for being here with me today.
No problem. I'm so happy to be here.
My first question for you is, how have you had to adjust the way that you work during this COVID-19 pandemic?
So I would say the biggest adjustment right now has been that instead of scheduling in-person interviews, we've been doing a lot of Zoom interviews. And, you know, people might say that could be considered easier. But in my opinion, I think it takes a lot away from the ability to tell the story. It sounds not as great, it doesn't look as good, and it takes away from the emotion. But yeah, that's probably the biggest change would be doing Zoom interviews versus in-person interviews in a lot of cases. And like, we are still meeting with people, wearing masks and that kind of thing. But
so for the stories that you do have to go out and talk to people in person, how are you keeping yourself safe on the streets?
So starting last week, we all were required to wear masks to work in the office. They've split us up. Instead of us all being in the newsroom, like the reporters and all the producers, we're spread out across the entire office. Like sales works from home, so people work in the sales offices and just even like conference rooms. And then, yeah, like I said, we wear masks in the office. And then when we go out for interviews, we also wear our masks. And I mean, I will wear it up until the point that I have to do a stand-up. And, you know, at that point, the person that I've probably talked to has gone away. My photographer is still wearing a mask. So, yeah, we've been doing a pretty good job at staying socially distant. And we also, I forgot, normally we would ride in the same car as our photographer, but for the past couple of weeks we've been riding separately. So I drive and they drive.
And what are some ways that your station has dealt with covering the news?
You know, I think that we obviously want to keep our viewers informed. It's a small city in Pennsylvania and they want to know what's going on. So we air a press conference with the county executive every day, and we allow people to ask questions through like these Facebook videos that the anchors have been doing. So that way, you know, they feel like they can ask questions and get the answers that they're looking for. In addition to that, I would say that every day we try to incorporate some act of kindness story or something lighthearted just to remind people that even though this is a really crazy time, there are families and individuals that are doing things to give back to the community or just help each other out.
And are there any other precautions that your station has taken to keep everybody safe?
Just lots of hand sanitizer throughout the office, and let me think. I mean, we get a lot of complaints about how we don't wear them on air, like the masks, that we don't wear masks on the air. But I don't know. We got an email from our news director saying that it could be to our advantage to wear it like around our neck, just so it seems like when the second we're off air, we put it on. For me personally, maybe I'll start doing that if people start to complain more, but I don't know. I think we do a pretty good job of everyone else that's around us. The newsroom is pretty big. We've limited that's another thing. We've limited, instead of doing 2 anchors at a time, we have 1 anchor on the desk at a time. And yeah, everyone is pretty spread out in the newsroom. And even when we go out and shoot interviews, same thing with me and the photog, very distant.
So what has been the hardest thing about covering this pandemic?
I would say the hardest thing is coming up with new angles and new stories when so many things are closed, and it's hard to get people to want to talk to you for a variety of reasons. For example, they might not want their employer to know that they're talking to us, or they also just might not want people to see them outside of their house, you know. So um, it's been challenging to lock down interviews and also just come up with new ways to show what's going on, you know, because like things are happening, lots of things are being rules are being changed, rules are changing all the time. But sometimes it's difficult, like it feels like you did the same thing for the past like couple days, you know, like because it all relates back to the virus. So just trying to be creative and think about every person in the community's perspective on something, you know, like whether it be a store owner or a landlord, or you know what I'm saying, like try to think about every member of the community and how they would be impacted by COVID-19.
That's something that I wanted to ask you as well. How have you been able to find these stories?
So there actually are people that still reach out to us, especially if they're in an unfortunate situation. Let's say they lost their job, or they are still going into work, but they don't feel like the necessary safety precautions have been taken. So we do still get calls and emails saying, you know, come check this out. We'd love to speak to you. Um, but other than that, yeah, I've come up with a few things. You know, in the beginning of this, like a few weeks ago, I don't think a lot of people, myself included, here realized how big this was going to be. So some of the stories that I did in the beginning of when the pandemic really started, um, they were more, I'm trying to think of how to explain it. Like I incorporated, trying to think how to explain it. Like I did one story about how to stay fit during quarantine, and I talked to different fitness instructors locally and asked what they were doing for their clients. And a lot of them said that they were posting stuff online, and I think that was like a positive, fun story that people would have liked to see and know that they can just go online and do these free exercise classes and stuff. But there also was a lot of negative feedback, like in the days after it was posted, just because um, I was close to the person and I wasn't wearing a mask. Like I said, this was weeks ago. But so I guess now I've been a little bit reluctant to come up with my own ideas in terms of how the interview is going to go. I have to check in with the news director and usually kind of base my stories off of people reaching out to us versus, well, that's not entirely true. I think also, even schools, it's been really hard to communicate with uh, people people that do PR for education systems, just because they don't have answers about what graduation will look like. We've just shifted to online classes for a lot of the high schools and schools in this area, but I tried to pitch a story the other day about graduation being virtual, maybe potentially socially distant with masks, and yeah, not a lot of people got back to me, and if they did, they just said that they don't want to do a story until they have a confirmed plan of what they're doing for graduation.
And what would you say has been the thing that has surprised you the most from your coverage?
Yeah, it has been surprising to see the amount of people that are giving back to the community and trying to help out their neighbors, just be there for one another, because obviously we all have to stay home and not interact, but so many people have been trying to do things for their kids' birthdays. And I did this one story about this 50 anniversary for this couple. The husband was in a nursing home, and the wife hasn't seen her husband in weeks. And so what they did was, I'm sure you've seen this before, they came up to the window with music and balloons, and it was a really heartwarming story just to see that there's still people that are supporting each other and making an effort to brighten each other's day.
And like you were saying, you got some complaints from certain stories, but what other types of messages do you get from viewers?
Yeah, I've received some messages about other stories that I've done outside more recently. And it snows here a lot, and it actually has been snowing here recently. But this weekend, there was actually some nice spring weather, and I did a story on just people getting outside wearing masks, obviously, and how during this time it's important to, if you have family nearby, to maybe to take a moment and spend time with them, because everyone's so busy all the time with school and work and all these kinds of things. And in the story, I got to speak to this kid and his grandfather who were fishing for trout. And it sounds kind of silly, but you know, in that kind of relationship, they probably don't get to spend that much time together. And you can tell it means a lot that, even though it's an unfortunate time, and it's a everyone's kind of struggling, especially like, I don't know, I worry about the economy. But anyway, on a positive note, it's nice to see that in this unfortunate situation, there are some relationships being strengthened. And yeah, it's kind of heartwarming. So I've gotten feedback, especially about that story, just because I think we see a lot of negative things out there. So yeah, just appreciation for some positivity in the news.
Yes. And what are some other changes that you're expecting in the future for your coverage and your station as well?
I'm not totally sure. I mean, I think that we will probably carry a mask around with us for the next couple of months. In terms of coverage, we've been doing, like I said earlier, these Facebook Lives. The anchors have been doing Facebook Lives where they take questions from the public. I'm not sure how much longer we will continue to do that, as well as we have a daily press conference with the county executive, and we've been airing those and turning those into stories. So I'm not sure how long we will continue those. I'm sure we'll continue to provide the numbers of people with confirmed cases in the area and the greater Pennsylvania area, but I think we might limit some of the coverage as numbers decline. Granted, you know, we are seeing the numbers decrease because, I mean, here, the area here is not that, the population is not that dense. So we have around 50 confirmed cases in Erie, but so realistically, what they're saying is there should be another 50 cases or so in this area. So I think once the curve flattens, we'll do a little bit less corona coverage, and maybe, you know, once the courts are back open as well, a little bit more of what we used to do, if that makes sense. I'm not going to say that I know when this will happen or how little, like how much we'll decrease our corona coverage, but I think the biggest change will be wearing a mask or bringing a mask wherever you go, and just keeping the same safety precautions, and be willing to be patient with the people that we're interviewing, and agreeing to maybe do a Zoom interview or schedule it for a time that's more convenient for their family, whatever the circumstances, just being flexible.
So with all this uncertainty that you're dealing with, how are you managing or dealing with the stress that you have?
Right now it's my weekend, and I don't know, I ran at Emerson, I ran cross country, and I haven't really been running that much uh, recently just because it's cold. But yeah, I think since this virus started, I have been getting out of the house and going for long runs. And I mean, it sounds bad because we're not supposed to be outside, but getting some fresh air feels really good. I feel like other than that, I try not to go to the grocery store. I try not to, spend too much time out in essential businesses, I guess. But yeah, definitely getting in some long runs and catching up on sleep and calling my friends like most people are probably doing at this time.
And could you also talk a little bit about how you're balancing your work from home?
I'm pretty new to this job, so for right now, I really enjoy it, and I think as time goes on and things do get more stressful, especially with the virus, and making sure we're spreading the right information because there is misinformation out there, and that gets a little bit stressful when viewers are confused and we get that kind of feedback. So I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes actually the best thing to do is to stop reading the Facebook comments, just turn off my phone or put my phone away and watch a movie, or um, like make a list of, I have a new apartment, obviously, like things I want to do around the apartment, and just not feed too much into the Facebook stuff and the online. Um, but it's tough because you also do need to see what people are seeing and see what people want to hear about. But yeah, I think the best way to sort of balance work and home life is to not get too sucked into the social media aspect of it.
And my last question for you is or actually, what is some advice that you could give to broadcast journalism students?
I would say for anyone that wants to go into this field, the biggest thing is, of course, working hard, but also confidence. I think that at Emerson, we learn all of the skills, and you really need to own up to that. And when you show up to work, be confident in your abilities. I can't speak to whether or not you'll have a photographer or, if you'll be doing the editing, but we really did learn, or I learned so much from Marsha and the staff at the EDC, that it's important to remember all those things and be confident. If you want to do a story and you know that you have the right sources, speak up to the news director or the producer or the assignment editor and say, I think this is a good idea, and I'm gonna pursue it. Because I think when you start to doubt yourself, it everything sort of derails, and um, it's easy to go from having a good day to a lot of plans following through. So I would say, like, believe in yourself and believe in your story ideas and the connections that you make. If you talk to someone and you are like, oh wow, that would be a great story, follow through, and don't be afraid to, maybe you'll be covering that story versus something that a producer or assignment editor had planned for you. But if you think that you will be able to execute it better, I think it's important to speak up for yourself.
That's very useful advice. And is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I learned a lot at Emerson, and I'm grateful for my time there. And I think that it's a little bit scary, of course, especially being on live TV for the first time or first couple times. But I really do think back to the capstone and ENG and even all my classes before that. And it really does calm me down knowing that I've already kind of been through so much, or I've learned so much. So yeah, I'm just really appreciative for my time at Emerson.
Well, thank you so much, Chelsea, for taking the time to talk to me and for all the work that you're doing to keep us informed and safe.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I never thought that this would happen, obviously, but I'm glad to be working or deemed an essential worker at this time.
And thank all of you for watching this episode of Reporting from the Frontline of the Pandemic. Again, I was speaking with Chelsea Swift, a news reporter at Jet 24 Action News in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I'm Victoria Gonzalez.